For more than 200 years, there has always been an American fighting ship bearing the name Independence. From a 10-gun Continental sloop to the first aircraft carrier that was called Independence, winning for herself 8 battle stars during the Pacific Campaign of World War II. And here today is this other, newer carrier, Independence, 80,000 tons and 1/5 of a mile in length. She's both mothership and purpose to her 5,000 crewmen. That long tradition from canvas sail and wooden hull to a floating fortress and home to 9 squadrons of seaborne fighting aircraft is grand and illustrious. Today, she represents the fulfillment of a vital cornerstone in the American dream, to maintain freedom of the seas. The awesome achievement of bringing about the making of this and those other sister ships, our mighty aircraft carriers, is an extraordinary story of courage and perseverance against great odds. To make possible a giant marauding ship of the seas that is also a floating airbase, a highly mobile launch platform for an ever-ready force of armed fighting aircraft. It's a great story of men in the sea, and it's also a tribute to man's yearning to achieve flight and mastery of the skies.
Navy men the world over dreamed of linking sea and air power from the moment they first saw the potential of military aviation. They faced, though, 2 major challenges. How do you get an airplane to take off from a ship at sea? And then, having done this, how do you get it safely back on board? The contest for a proper aircraft carrier had begun. As early as 1910, Eugene Ely, an impatient American, won the first leg of the race when he plunged off a wooden deck fitted onto the Navy cruiser Birmingham at Hampton Roads, Virginia. The plan had been to make the attempt as the ship steamed at 20 knots to help the plane get up to speed. But Ely couldn't wait and cut loose with the Birmingham still at anchor. He dipped perilously, grazed the water, but he made it. The first man ever to take off successfully from the deck of a ship. Now he was ready for the next challenge, a safe landing. San Francisco Bay and the USS Pennsylvania, again fitted with a wooden flat top, was the location. This time, Ely took off from shore, swooped down over the Pennsylvania's deck, and clunked aboard, prompting the captain to proclaim this the most important landing of a bird since the dove flew back to the ark. Naval aviation was underway. The baton was now passed on to the shipbuilders to come up with vessels specifically designed to accommodate the flying machines. Britain's Royal Navy got the jump on everyone when in 1917 they converted a cruiser into the first aircraft carrier, the HMS Furious. The HMS Argus followed in 1918. In 1922, the U.S. Navy converted the Jupiter, a ship originally built to haul coal into the USS Langley, the first in a long line of distinguished carriers to fly the Stars and Stripes. By the mid-20s, Britain, America, and Japan all had makeshift carriers and were in a mad dash to define their role in sea power. Naval engineers, pilots, and aircraft manufacturers went to work perfecting the new ships and learning the tricks of flying from them. Huge hooks were added to the belly of the planes that snagged the heavy arresting wires on the deck, literally catching the planes and preventing them from pitching into the sea. Keeping the decks clear for flight operations meant storing the aircraft below, so powerful elevators were installed to move the planes into position swiftly and efficiently. Catapult launching systems were developed to solve the nagging problem of getting the heavier planes up to takeoff speed from the short decks. By the end of the decade, these innovations were all in place, and the race of discovery was over. The world's leaders were convinced that the carrier would become an essential aspect of military engagements, and a new generation of these mighty weapons was ordered. Despite the worldwide buildup, the place of the aircraft carrier in naval strategy remained secondary to the ships with the big guns, cruisers, destroyers, and the mighty battleships. A battle at sea was a matter of raw firepower, thick armor, and shrewd positioning. Put the ships in the right place and open fire. In those pre-radar days, an airplane could help spot enemy ships and then direct fire. But an aircraft carrier was really only thought of as a reconnaissance vessel. The eyes of the fleet. The battleship was the real weapon. It wasn't until American Admiral Joseph Reeves led a pivotal series of military exercises in the late 1920s that naval officers around the world began to think of the carrier and its flying machines as an offensive force. Reeves was a pioneer in transforming the carrier from a strategic instrument of defense into an attack weapon, as this story relates.
Fleet Problem 10 was held early in 1929 to test naval and shore defenses of the Panama Canal against a conventional battleship attack. Reeves left his safe position behind the line of battleships approaching the western canal locks from the north. He brought Saratoga through a wide sweep south of the canal zone. Then he turned back north to approach his target along an unexpected course. We took off from the Saratoga at 2 in the morning while still 200 miles of sea. Nobody'd ever done that before. We hit the canal locks at dawn with a beautiful high-altitude crisscross dive bombing attack. Nobody's ever done that before either. We took the defenders completely by surprise. Joe Reeves was delighted. So were we. We knew this was really the first unveiling of carrier aviation.
In 1938, Admiral Ernie King led a new set of exercises testing the various advantages of carrier-launched attacks on both land and sea targets. The fact that one of the targets for these operations was the United States military installation at Pearl Harbor proved to be an ironic harbinger of things to come.
This time we had the Saratoga and the Lexington, both in our side. And the idea was that we were going in and wreck the Navy Yard and attack and bomb and torpedo and sink any ships we could find there. In the meantime, the fighters would immobilize and pin down any Air Force.
Watching these exercises with great interest was a brilliant Japanese admiral, Isoroku Yamamoto, who just 3 years later would stun the world by surprising the Americans with practically the same tactics on that very location. Yamamoto was a prudent man, though, and before implementing his plan to attack the U.S. Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, he looked for further proof that armed warplanes launched from aircraft carriers really could knock out major military targets. He found that proof in 2 brilliant triumphs by Britain's Royal Navy. Over a year before Pearl Harbor, on November 11, 1940, the British launched a stunning and carefully planned attack on the Italian fleet stationed at the Mediterranean port of Toronto by utilizing an outwardly unassuming light plane, the Ferry Swordfish. The string bag, as it was nicknamed, was a wooden, slow-moving, rather flimsy-looking biplane, the appearance of which belied its true colors as a lethal weapon. Flying in 2 waves of 12 from the decks of the Illustrious, the Swordfish lumbered into the Italian harbor, dropped their payload, and with one fell swoop crippled half the Italian fleet. It cost the British only 2 planes, but Il Duce was out, 3 battleships. In the stormy North Atlantic, another lethal blow to the navies of the Axis alliance was struck by the fragile Swordfish when they damaged the mightiest of all battleships, the German Bismarck, out on her maiden voyage. On May 26, 1941, after a 6-day naval pursuit, Swordfish, launched from the carrier Ark Royal, smashed the Bismarck's rudder with torpedoes, allowing the attacking British fleet to close in and finish off the prize of Hitler's navy. With the sinking of the Bismarck, the Japanese found the confirmation they had been looking for. Naval aviation was ready for center stage. Yamamoto was now convinced that a carrier-based attack force could deal decisive blows against targets on land as well as at sea. The infamous attack on Pearl Harbor made believers out of the whole world. With the credo, "The fiercest serpent can be overcome by a swarm of ants," Yamamoto and his swarm shook America like never before. But by yet another strange quirk of fate, not one single carrier lay amidst the wreckage at the end of that fateful Sunday in 1941. Miraculously, every one of America's flat tops was at sea. Japanese leaders still believed that battleships were their greatest threat. They were to discover otherwise very soon. Oddly enough, the first good punch American carriers landed on the Japanese came not from the Navy at all, but from Colonel Jimmy Doolittle and his crack group of Army Air Corps pilots and crew. Doolittle painted a picture of a carrier on the ground and drilled his men until they could take off and land their hefty Mitchell B-25s in this extremely limited space. Satisfied they were ready, Doolittle crammed 16 of these heavy loaded bombers onto the deck of Admiral Bull Halsey's Hornet and steamed off into the Pacific to hit the Japanese head on. Their goal? Bomb Tokyo. Normally, stormy seas would limit the possibility of launching a carrier-based attack, but the gale force winds on that brisk April day in 1942 conveniently provided just the extra force needed to get those huge planes into the air, with Doolittle himself leading the way to the target.
Were virtually unopposed as they flew on the deck. They swept in over the coast on their way to Tokyo. Elements separated and some climbed to 1,500 feet for the bombing. At 12:15, the attack was opened by Doolittle, who dove in before he unloaded his incendiaries upon the Japanese capital. One after another, they checked off their targets. Tank factory, shipyard, docks, railroad yards, steel plant, gunpowder factory.
The material damage they did was insignificant, but as a morale booster and display of force, the raid was a tremendous success. When the news went out that American bombers had hit Tokyo, Halsey and the American public rejoiced at the victory. The Japanese were stunned. The Doolittle raid on Tokyo boldly announced the arrival of the most important weapon of the Pacific, the American carrier. By the summer of 1942, the Japanese forces had expanded all over the Pacific. They'd taken the Philippines, Singapore, Malaysia, and were knocking on Australia's door. Admiral Yamamoto wanted to wipe out the American fleet once and for all, to clear the way for total Japanese domination in the Pacific. A master plan was devised that, if successful, would completely demolish the American forces. A huge armada comprised of Japan's most powerful battleships and 4 of her largest carriers began steaming eastward. Their objective was to draw a weaker American fleet into a trap. The first goal? To attack and immobilize the U.S. military installation at Midway Island. Once again, as at Pearl Harbor, the Japanese assault depended on total surprise. But the U.S. Pacific Fleet, under the brilliant command of Admiral Chester Nimitz, was way ahead of them at Midway. American naval intelligence had intercepted Yamamoto's agenda, and Nimitz sent his most powerful carriers, Yorktown, Hornet, and Enterprise, to lie in ambush just north of the island, waiting to turn the tables on the enemy. The plan worked more perfectly than anyone could have imagined. Just after Yamamoto's first strike hit Midway Island, Nimitz launched a full-scale counterattack from his carrier decks. As the warplanes took off and made for the enemy fleet, American pilots, outnumbered and outgunned, hoped they would surprise Yamamoto's forces. They did. The Japanese, still unaware of the presence of the U.S. naval forces, were caught by the American dive bombers like sitting ducks as they rearmed their planes from ground attack to sea attack bomb loads. It was a resounding victory for the Americans. In the space of 6 minutes between 10:24 and 10:30 a.m. on June 4th, 3 Japanese carriers were sent to the bottom of the sea. Before the battle was over, America lost one carrier, the Yorktown. But that was a small consolation for Yamamoto. He had lost all 4 of his carriers, over 300 of his veteran pilots, and a total of over 3,500 men. Aboard his flagship, the tired admiral fell ill and ordered the fleet to retire. It was the greatest American naval victory of the war. The tide had turned in the Pacific. The Japanese needed nearly 2 years to regroup after their devastation at Midway. And on June 19, 1944, they sent their first fleet against Task Force 58 of the U.S. Pacific Fleet in the Battle of the Philippine Sea. Once again, a Japanese victory was not meant to be. Instead, the day belonged to the American fighter pilots. As Midway was won by the dive bomber, the Battle of the Philippine Sea was won by the fighters and their shiny blue F-6F Hellcats. The Japanese High Command sent off a total of 4 big raids, but the Hellcats were waiting for them, each time. Tearing through the clear Pacific skies came call after call. Scratch 1, Judy. Scratch another kill. Scratch a 0. In a single day, the Japanese lost 346 planes and 2 aircraft carriers, including the brand new giant Taiho. Amazingly, the U.S. lost only 30 planes and sustained a single relatively harmless hit on 1 battleship. The battle was such a romp, it was nicknamed the Great Marianas Turkey Shoot. Later that night, Admiral Mark Mitcher, taking a huge security risk and breaking all official Navy rules, ordered the blazing of every available light aboard his entire fleet to guide his pilots home. This battle might have ended tragically as plane after plane ditched into the blackness of the Pacific night simply because they couldn't see their carrier. But instead, Mitcher took the risk, and it made him a legend. Japanese and American naval forces next locked horns in the attack at Leyte Gulf.
Men of the 6th Army hit Philippine beaches and fought inland. Liberation of 16 million Filipinos was on the march, led by General MacArthur and President Osmeña.
Over the next 2 days, the Japanese tried to cut the 6th Army supply lines by squeezing them from both the north and the south. The southern group was stopped quickly, but a huge naval force pressed down from the north to engage American forces and interrupt the invasion.
Sweeping down from Japanese home waters came this 3rd great enemy force, supported by waves of land-based bombers, dedicated to the imperial mission of striking the finishing blow for Hirohito. The Japs were flinging on the board of war their highest stakes, their future as a naval power. And once again, our fighting men rose up to meet the enemy. Even the men of the sunken Princeton fought on from other decks. Our pilots swarmed from more carriers than the Japs had ever seen before to knock the enemy out of the sky, blast them from the sea. Below them was the Japanese fleet. This was it. day, every enemy ship that still had a rudder was doing its best to turn and run for home. For even while thousands of Japs were being fished out of the very waters they had considered their own private sea, our fleet was hunting down the remnants of 3 Imperial forces. And as night fell on the last day of battle, this was all that would ever be seen of 24 Japanese warships and 400 enemy planes. 35 more warships were sinking or straggling home.
As the Empire slipped through their fingers, the Japanese devised a new and truly horrifying threat to the Allied forces in the Pacific. The divine wind. The kamikaze. Okinawa, April 1st, 1945. The Marines who hit the beaches on that Easter Sunday were met with rather unusual conditions. Resistance was minimal. The enemy seemed to be in hiding. In waters off the coast, sailors also waited, unsure, anxious, knowing something was coming. Then, after a week of waiting, it started. A wave of 355 kamikazes began their ferocious assault on the huge fleet off the island. These human-guided missiles relentlessly attacked the American fleet with a viciousness never before seen. It was a desperate move in desperate times. During the 3 months of the Battle of Okinawa, over 1,400 of these mostly young and inexperienced pilots completed their suicide missions, resulting in a loss of almost 5,000 American lives, as well as 34 vessels completely destroyed, and another 368 severely damaged. This was to be the last formidable Japanese action in the Pacific, a grim reminder of how fiercely the Japanese had fought, right up until the conclusion of the war.
With the end of the Second World War, the aircraft carrier had not only survived her baptism of fire, but had proven her mettle in the greatest air and sea battles in history, and in so doing, established her permanent role in modern warfare. No country's shores were beyond the reach of her planes, and as was soon to be discovered, merely the threat of her close presence was a concern to be reckoned with by any potential enemy. She could and would reach out to her adversaries with a swift and bold response, surpassing even her abilities in the great battles of the war in the Pacific. For now, she had added yet another weapon to her awesome inventory. the supersonic jet aircraft.
The forces of the United Nations are in Korea to put down an aggression that threatens not only the whole fabric of the United Nations, but all human hopes of peace and justice. If the United Nations yields to the forces of aggression, no nation will be safe or secure.
When President Truman ordered troops to support South Korea on June 30th, 1950, a U.S. carrier, the Valley Forge, responded swiftly and launched her first raid in less than a week. Fighter jocks from the Second World War hopped into familiar prop planes like the Corsair. But there was a new plane around to kick the hell out of the enemy, the sleek F-9F Panther. The jets were heavier than the old prop planes and required greater speed to get airborne. The solution was the old idea of the catapult. Since the late 1940s, the Navy had been experimenting with steam-powered catapults, which were now modified to provide just the extra power necessary to launch these screaming warplanes into the air and off to battle. In addition to the changes on the flight decks, the carrier's overall function had also changed in Korea. There were no large naval formations tangling with one another on the open seas. The aircraft carrier, once the prowling master of massive engagements at sea, served principally as a mobile airbase for bombing raids and tactical attacks against ground targets. By the late 60s, a new addition had arrived on almost all attack carriers, the angled deck. Designers were fearful that the landing speeds of jets would increase the horrifying accidents they had witnessed in World War II. And they had long been eager to arrange the deck so that planes could land and take off simultaneously. The solution to both questions was geometric. Angle a portion of the deck aft to receive incoming jets, putting them on a course safely away from the bridge. That left the foredeck free for pairs of steam catapults to launch outgoing aircraft. This system was in place by the time American carriers took up positions off the coast of Vietnam. In Vietnam, as in Korea, the carrier's mission was principally to provide ground support. But big changes had also taken place in the air-to-air combat arena. In Korea, the concept of a dogfight still made some sense. By the time of the Vietnam War, though, the speed of the jets made even tailing a fighter a tough assignment. Improvements in radar and tracking systems were now enabling fighters to respond to a threat in seconds, not eye to eye, but with long-range rockets and heat-seeking missiles. The most recent aircraft carrier advance is the development of vertical or short takeoff and landing aircraft, VSTOL. These planes reduce the complex technology of catapults and recovery systems to a minimum. They can land like a helicopter. And with only a small area of deck, a VSTOL like the Sea Harrier is off to battle. This new technology has also stimulated a new sort of carrier, smaller than her predecessors and fitted with a short ski jump type of ramp at her bow. This feature, brainchild of British Lieutenant Commander D.R. Taylor, reduces the length of deck needed for a short takeoff and saves the installation of a catapult. This new system was both a blessing and a curse for Britain when she brought her naval aviators into action on board the HMS Hermes in the Falkland Islands. The Hermes took up position off the coast of the Falklands and was soon sending Harriers and Sea King helicopters off to support the invasion and intercept attacking Argentinian aircraft. But while the ski jump allows a swift takeoff for the VSTOL, it also makes it impossible to use other naval aircraft which require a catapult. Without a carrier capable of launching fixed-wing aircraft, Britain could launch no early warning radar aircraft, leaving her support ships open to devastating attacks from the Argentine Air Force. Today's big supercarriers function more and more as a team of aircraft and ship working as a single system. For even though the range and power of a modern nuclear-powered carrier is greater than ever before, it is also more vulnerable to a new array of lethal weapons. With the threat of missile and rocket attacks a constant reality, today's carrier depends on more than her own radar for notification of a threat. If a hostile situation seems imminent, the E-2C Hawkeye airborne early warning planes are launched. These planes fly to the edge of the carrier's radar range and extend it further with their own complex system of radar detection equipment. Flying in tandem with them are a pair of long-range fighters, like the F-14 Tomcat, the muscles behind the Hawkeye's eyes and ears. Connected together by data link, the Tomcat can instantly receive information from the Hawkeye directly into its weapon system and respond to a threat swiftly. Together, these two make an awesome combination. This kind of teamwork enabled American carriers to defend themselves swiftly and fiercely. On the two occasions Libya sent Russian-built jet fighters to tangle with American forces in the Mediterranean. Given no alternative, U.S. Navy Tomcats quickly shot the Libyan jets down with their heat-seeking missiles before heading back home to their carriers.
Battle-scarred, victorious, heaped with the accolades of a grateful citizenry, she has served her people well across the oceans of the world. And from a terrible instrument of war, the aircraft carrier has become a keeper of the peace, a great and noble warden, patrolling the open seas, ever alert, ever ready. She serves mankind, like this magnificent ship, this independence, to maintain freedom of the seas.